Now to create a user, we send a request to the user's endpoint and include a user object in the body of the request. Let's see it in action. So back to our project. Here in the users folder, let's open this route file. Earlier, we exported this get function for returning a collection of users. Now in this file, we should export a function called post for creating users. So this function handles post requests, which are used for creating objects. Now we give it a request parameter of type next request. Now in this function, first we should read the body of the request. To do that, we call request.json. Now this returns a promise, so we should await it and make this function async. So with this, we get the request body. Now, before going any further, let's just return the body in the response. So whatever we send to this endpoint, we'll get it in response. So we return next response.json, and here we include the body. Now, we cannot test this in browser. To test it, we have to use a tool called Postman. So Google Postman, you'll find it here. Download it. It's a very useful tool. A lot of people have it. You might already have it. Once you install and run it, you will see something like this. So on this page, we can create a new request. First, we change the type of request from get to post. Here we enter the URL, which is localhost port 3000/API/users. Then we go to the body tab. Here we select raw and JSON. Now in this box, we can type a user object. So we add curly braces. Now this user object shouldn't have the ID property because the ID should be generated by the server, in fact, in a database. So we only want to pass the name of a user here. Now in JSON, we should wrap each property name with double quotes. Otherwise we get an error. So we said name to Mosh. Now if we send this to the server, down here we can see the response. So the status is 200, which means successful. And here's the body of the response. So whatever we send to the server, we get it back. Beautiful. Now the next step is to simulate the generation of the ID. Again, in a real application, this should happen by database. But for now, I just want to hard code an ID here. So let's return an object. Here we set ID to 1 and name to body.name. Let's test it one more time. Send. Okay, here's what we get. Beautiful. Now, in a real application, once we read the body of the request, then we need to validate it. If the data is invalid, we return a 400 error. Otherwise, we return the data that was created. So here we can do a basic validation and say if body.name is falsy, meaning if it's an empty string or if it doesn't exist, then we're going to return next response.json. We pass an object with an arrow property. We can say name is required. Now, as the second argument to the JSON method, we pass an object and set status to 400. Now, back in Postman, let's clear the name and send the request. All right, take a look. So the status of the request is 400, which means bad request. And here's the error message. Also, if we remove the name property and send this request, we get the same response. Okay. Now, otherwise, if we pass a valid name, we get a new user object in the response. Now, in this case, the status is 200, but it's a common convention to use the status of 201 to indicate that an object was created. So back here, we can pass this object and set the status to 201. Now, let's test it one more time. All right, this time the status is 201. Beautiful.